love that band. I love that song. You can go look up Rising Appalachian, find some amazing songs from them. They want to build a world where growth happens through nurturing each other rather than by taking from each other. They want to build a world where love builds us up rather than hate tearing us down. Hey, in that story where there could have been, hate could have taken that family down. All the anger that they lived through in their life could have just destroyed their spirits. But who do you think was more shocked in that story that Devin read? Was it Joseph? Was it his brothers? Or was it their father, Jacob? Who was more just amazed at what happened there? Do you think when they went back, did the brothers tell the dad the whole truth? Or did they just say, look what we found. We must have been wrong before. After the surprise and the excitement, do you think they got along well? Or do you think there was some awkward tension? Did they remember the good times, or did they create new memories, or did they just realize that, wow, we sure are different people? Some of us have had these kinds of resurrection events in our family, in our life. Probably not quite as dramatic as this whole story, but some of us know what it's like to open our eyes one day to a totally new life, a totally new existence. When I was 17, I was an only child. I grew up an only child. And then I found out I had a sister. And I found out I had another sister. I don't do 23andMe because I probably have a lot of siblings. My father was quite philanderous. It was a surprise, but it took me 3 years to reach out to her. I've known several adults. I knew a woman several churches ago. She was in her early 90s when she discovered her whole life, those had been her parents, period. And in her early 90s, she discovered she had different birth parents. And she had to come to grips with that, which she did, joyfully. One minute you have no direction, the next minute a light bulb goes off. One day you feel all alone, the next day just the right person shows up and shines in your life. One night your life feels overwhelming. You cannot handle this. The next morning the sun comes up with new opportunities. You visit the doctor 100 times and it's scary every time. And then one day, one test, life is new again. Joseph put a lot of work into his resurrection. If you read in between last week's story, this week's story, you see so much resilience. Between the lines, you cannot imagine how much trauma healing, basically, he did. How did he figure out how to make his life stronger and better? You have to imagine that his brothers, some of them, the sensitive ones, must have worked through tons of anxiety and guilt. Some of them really had to work to forgive themselves, and some probably did. Mom and Dad, you know how hard they grieved. You can be sure for months and years they prayed for their son to come back. So much pain, so much work, and then a renewed relationship, hope for the future. The old ones had a new joy, the young ones had a new family. It happened in a moment, but it took a lifetime to change everything. It took a lifetime to regain something precious that they had in the past and to hold tightly what they felt like they had lost. And it took courage to envision this new future and to step in through all the bad memories. Now, the analogy is not perfect. I'm going to give you an analogy. It's not a perfect analogy. But our process as a church, far less dramatic, we've really never lost anything in the same way, but something about this church continues to be found over and over. In this congregation, I think we can tell a story. What sounds like Joseph is a story of renewed relationships, a story of hope for a future, a story about older folks who see joy through the wiggles of little babies and of new folks coming in and finding a stable place to grow their faith. We have had and shown the courage to regain something precious. None of us were thrown into a pit, per se, but many of you have been to churches. For over the last 50 years, churches have seen a decline all across America. Doesn't matter what kind of church, big or small, doesn't matter mega church or tiny church, immigrant church or mainline church, conservative church, liberal church, all denominations have seen a decline in the numbers of people who take part in these kinds of services. This church had some of that. There's hints of rebounding in a lot of places, but every kind of church has seen spirits bubble up, but numbers go down. And of course, here at Community of Grace, there has been an intention of growth for several years. Back before COVID, a lot of churches have felt renewal right after COVID. A lot of people came back, but most churches, it's been hard to maintain that rebound. And yet we have seen for several years continued people coming in and growing as part of this group of faith. We've seen more and more children in the hallways. They're running between legs over here while dozens of people gather for coffee. We see, it's not just that there are a lot more butts in the seat, but how much excitement is in this room sometimes these days. It's been great to celebrate a good song. We've held on to some of the old traditions like the yard sale. My gosh, we're never going to get rid of that yard sale. And we've allowed some of our traditions to be the soil for new things to grow. Back in 2020, right before COVID, by my best estimates, listening to stories, looking at numbers and lists and everything, there were about 115 people who were the most active in the church. 115 people who basically did something here more than every other month. There was another 100 folks who, they grew up here and they still called this their church. They came to Christmas. You know how that goes. Every church has that. But there were about 115 people who were central pillars of this church. And then we lost Linda Adams, Abby Brown, Jerry Durant, Ann Holyoke. We lost Marlene so recently. We said goodbye to Joan O'Hare, Nancy Ramsdale, Ed and Judy Sanders, Herman Braniff, Ed and Sally Taylor, Hoagie, Larry, Rod. The Becks moved away, the Copperns moved away, Brian and Emily moved away, Linda Page moved away. By my count, there's about 28 other folks who found another church or just drifted away for one reason or another. So by my count, since this church made a decision and a commitment to growth, something around 50% of the people that were here aren't here anymore, which means something like half the church stayed. Something like half the church stayed to help build something powerful and meaningful and sustainable. Marcy has worked so hard on keeping this building. She worked with Bud, she works with Darren. She's here all the time fixing the little things. If she was here today, we would all just say, thank you, Marcy. So if you remembered after church, just blow up her phone, text her and say, thank you, Marcy, for all she's done to keep this church going. Jeff does so much to keep his eye on the finances so that we are so close to being able to pay off our mortgage like a decade early. How awesome is that? And thanks to people like Jeff and Kristen and Tim who've just focused on the finances so much. Thanks to people like Dave back there, a calm spirit, a pillar of grounding, whether it's him in a Bible study or a meeting, and he just waits till the end and then asks just the right question for everyone to follow along. Everyone should want to be a little bit more like Dave. Kathy has helped the choir bond. So many people here have worked so hard, people who've been here a long time, to keep this place going so that new faces step in and step up. You got Jalen leading the band this morning. Thanks for that. Yeah. You guys don't forget how much Aiden and Jalen have helped teach us how to pray for little ones. There was a time not too long ago when that was a central part of our prayer life, was for little Sid. The Wisners aren't here today, but they were the first kind of new family to come in when we came back from COVID. They checked us out online. They wouldn't have been able to check us out online if it wasn't for the good AV folks back there. They checked us out online and they said, I think this group does a pretty good job of staying safe for COVID. And so they started coming and being part of us. Kayla, I think she's holding the baby back there. Yeah, she grew up in this church. She grew up in this church. Her parents are here, she's brothers and sisters, but she dragged Connor in here. He's done so much to paint over there. Drawing Emmanuel, who is starting to run around a little bit, passed around like the baby of the church, the mascot of the church. Devin left and came back. She came back and's been a firecracker here for music and for prayer. And Deborah back there holds her head high in faith and prayer. If you want anyone to pray for you in this church, you go right there. And she's brought her family into this church who've been a heartbeat for who we are. By my best count, we had 115 most active people. About 64 of those stayed, and since then, 87 new people have come along to be part of this church. 87 new people since COVID have become part, just lifeblood of this church. And there's 13 or so new people who are so new, we don't know if they're going to be part of this again. We don't know. We're going to see and be excited to see what comes of that. Your presence continues to show that God is blessing this community in abundant ways and in such different ways. We hope that the newest folks are finding a spiritual home. So over the years, so many of you prayed for this church to have kids and families, and we have lots of kids and families coming. You committed to mission projects, and we have too many mission projects. So many. There was literally from my first day in the office, there has been staff turnover. We had 2 staff tell me my first week, "It's so good you're here, now I can resign." Thanks. And literally over my 4.5 years, this is, with Kayla here now, this is the 8th week that we've had a full trained staff. But we have it now. It's a blessing. They're working together well. It has taken committed leaders, so many meetings. If you've been in a meeting that was too long, say amen. And that's the stuff it takes. That's the gritty stuff it takes. That's the fiber of a church that it takes to keep growing. We have folks engaging in Bible studies and confirmation classes. I have seen so many of you help your neighbors through tough things. We see 6-year-olds chasing the preteens after church. We have not shied away from controversy. Some churches think the only way to grow is to keep their mouth shut when things are dangerous and things are important. But we have still, even with that, we have built stronger communities. With Presbyterian women has always been strong, but now we have a men's group. With choir is always so tight. Band is always so tight. Next week we start a parents' small group so that folks with kiddos can just be together and support each other. As I understand, parents, it takes a little help to raise a little kid, so join in on that. I think next week you're going to just meet and say, when do we want to meet? How do we want to meet? We've never been in the same pit that Joseph's been in. This church has never dealt with the same crises that has ruined so many churches. But we've had dreams. And so many of you have put your effort and put your faith to the project of following God's calling in this church. And there is a spirit alive. There is a spirit alive. During the week, more people come in and chat with Charlie and me and Kelsey. On Sunday mornings, just some days, you just feel it. It helps when Kayla and her mom are dancing in the front, but you just feel it sometimes, the spirit alive. Because of this church, we find that Debbie asks great questions in our Bible studies, and she'll push back. She'll say, well, yeah, but my Bible says this. And okay, we'll say it says that. And then she asks a great question. Because of people like Boyd, who've stepped up to be the clerk, which is a hard position, because of that, we have stability here. Because God inspires the AV crew to figure out every technical issue, and Lord, the demons live in the computers around here. Because people are willing to figure out how to make coffee. Even some of the people who make coffee don't drink coffee. It's incredible. But they go in there and they make that so that we have a place to gather. We have extended families that come in here. And because folks want to care about their great-grandpa, they drag in their grandma over here and they just come and that's their pew. That is your pew. You grow up here. We are not healing the same brokenness that Joseph and his brothers had. But in powerful ways, this family of faith is stepping into new life. We're holding on to old memories, and we are welcoming new experiences. If you keep reading after what Devin read, we don't know what Joseph and Jacob and all that family did after this story. We don't know how those conversations really reconnected, if they started fresh. We don't know what was in store for them, and we don't know what's in store for us. They may have just gathered together and thought, this is our family and we are going to build this family, and they put walls up. And they might have been comfortable with that, or they might have found new partners and new children and new cousins. They might have found new messes to flare up and new arguments to have. We don't know if that's what it's like for us. Maybe these folks, this is the pillar of the church for now, and it will be for a long time. Or maybe we will continue to see people coming in. This is Alex and Hannah's second Sunday here. We don't know what their lives are going to be. We don't know the joys or the struggles that are going to happen or how these folks can be supportive to you. Brenda and Philip have been here like 5 times, and they're starting to get to know people. They say their granddaughter is coming in and kind of liking some of the other little kids here. We don't know how those relationships are going to grow up, or if their granddaughter comes and starts having her best friends here. We don't know how Joseph and Jacob had a new journey of growth. We don't know what God exactly had in store for them after they figured out this revelation and resurrection. But we can thank God that we hear a story about that. We can thank God that we can be reminded that in our lives, resurrection happens. We can thank God that we know when we call for new life, we yearn for new life, we expect God to shine a light into our heart. It happens. Amen.